So I have been asked to explain how this corruption happens. Corruption happens when power resides in personalities rather than in processes. When power resides in a personality, then attempts are made to influence that personality. The human personality can be influenced, and that is why it has to be framed within processes that ensure that influences acting on personalities do not pervert the course towards an objective. So when power is allowed to reside in personalities, processes invariably are devalued. And this happens because those personalities are influenced. And very soon, something happens that we can call influence peddling. There emerge people who will influence those in whom power rests for a consideration. And after a while, as this consideration grows, the people in whom power rests begin to see what is happening and demand a share for themselves. In a very short time, the consideration demanded by the person in whom power rests becomes much larger than the consideration demanded by the person who is attempting to influence them. Greed does not have any limits. And so these considerations that are demanded begin to grow in size. They have grown from 5%, 10%, 25% to as high as 40%. And when that happens, there is an attempt to seize as much of these considerations as possible. In other words, there is a reluctance to share. And this reluctance to share has an impact on organizational structure. It causes organizational deterioration as people become disillusioned and lose their sincerity. And then the organization loses its integrity and becomes weak. And very soon, only those who have the power to demand these considerations are interested in the organization's existence at all. And we saw this happening. And we saw how this dynamic brought one of the oldest parties in the country to its knees. Its collapse is still not complete. It is still falling apart. And there is no way of knowing whether it can be salvaged. Imagine what would have happened if this trend had not been arrested. It is very easy to imagine. It is very simple. You would have seen the same thing happening to the state. The state would have crumbled, except for a small skeleton of people who had power and the wealth and the arms required to enforce their writ upon the land. In the coming months, if the current government has the courage and the skill to investigate what happened, then you will realize what kind of a disaster this island has just escaped. And I hope that this realization will awaken you to the need to act decisively in order to prevent something such, anything such, happening again in the future.